and he announced with pride, "I am the poet of the camp." His parents, smiling in delight, stood nearby as he recited words I could not comprehend. I could only see and understand that all the shells and barrel bombs, the bullets and death, had not extinguished nor even dampened the bright and hopeful child before me. All is not yet lost. 6 years ago, Syrians organized peaceful protests against the repressive rule of their president, Bashar al-Assad. The specific incident that triggered the protests was the arrest and torture of a group of teenagers who had painted revolutionary slogans on the school wall. Well, the peaceful protests were met with violence. Soldiers opened fire into the protesters, killing several people. Soon, hundreds of thousands of Syrians took to the streets, still peacefully, and the regime responded with brutal violence. Armed militias soon developed in self-defense and to push the soldiers out of the cities, the towns. The civil war had begun. Now into this chaos steps a terrifying organization now known as the Islamic State, or ISIS. It made its home in the northern Syrian city of Raqqa and brutalized everyone under its control. It also committed acts of terror throughout the country. What began as another case of despotic, repressive government rule had grown into a civil war and then into an international conflict with numerous countries providing fighters and weapons to one side or the other, or the other, or the other. Caught in the middle were and are ordinary people, civilians, mothers, husbands, grandparents, children, people like you and me. Today, 6 years later, the war rages on. More than 11 million Syrians have been displaced from their homes by the violence. 6.5 million internally displaced within Syria, and 4.5 million refugees in neighboring countries and beyond. In Europe, 2 countries have led the way in welcoming Syrians fleeing the violence. Germany with the greatest number, and Sweden with the highest number relative to its population. And I want to take a moment and acknowledge the extraordinary kindness and generosity of the Swedish people in the face of this unending catastrophe. What really takes my breath away in this terrible war, and I've been working with survivors of war and genocide for 20 years, what really takes my breath away is the extent of the intentional targeting and slaughter of civilians, including children. Residential neighborhoods, schools, and hospitals have all been destroyed by barrel bombs, rockets, shells, and gunfire. The devastation of East Aleppo by government and Russian aircraft was witnessed by the world in real time, seen and tweeted about in social media. The world watched as Aleppo collapsed in upon itself, its residents killed, wounded, or driven into exile. In Syria today, 3 million young children have never known a time without war, a life without fear and loss and terrifying uncertainty. In the refugee camps and settlements that surround the country, children live in poverty, many without access to school, coping with their parents' grief and trauma, and dealing with their own sense of loss and uncertainty. Warchild, your host for this magical evening, can't stop the war. Would that we could, but we can't. What we do, is we provide healing spaces where kids can find support, lower their stress, ease their pain, play, and have the chance to be kids again. We provide access to non-formal education because so many kids don't have access to school. And we offer support to parents whose own stress and trauma can lead to harsh or impaired parenting. We do this with refugees in Lebanon, in Jordan, Iraq, and through our partners, we do this throughout Syria itself. In the terrible darkness of war, there's one hopeful light that we cannot allow ourselves to lose sight of. Just as our bodies were designed to heal, so too our minds are wonderfully resilient. Our spirits, if you will. We really are built to heal, even from potentially traumatic experiences. Only a minority of refugees develop enduring post-trauma reactions. If we can provide a safe and supportive environment for refugee children and families, we can help them adapt successfully to their new lives, wherever they land. It turns out, and this always surprises people, it turns out that the stresses that refugees face after they leave their homeland have as powerful an impact on their well-being as whatever they experienced during the war. I'm going to repeat that because that's such a weird concept, but it's true. In study after study after study, the stresses that refugees experience after they leave the war zone have as big an impact on their mental health as whatever they experienced during the war. And that means if we can create conditions of safety and support, we can do a great deal to ease the impact of the violence and loss they've endured. Well, until the war comes to an end, we need to support Syrian kids and families in every way we can, whether they're in Syria, in refugee camps, in neighboring countries, or still further from home. Here in Europe, what can I say? In a time of growing nationalism and anti-refugee sentiment, I look at Sweden as a shining light of what's possible when compassion wins out over fear. I am deeply honored to be with you this evening. Thank you.